Imagine standing on the edge of oblivion. The entire world ready to burn in an instant, and the fate of billions resting on one decision, one human judgment, one lucky break. 10 times in history, humanity teetered on the brink of nuclear annihilation and survived by sheer chance, calculation, or instinct. If you want to understand just how close we came, subscribe now, because missing these stories could cost more than you think. The cold tension of nuclear brinkmanship isn't theoretical. It isn't history books sanitized into dull paragraphs. This is human psychology under extreme pressure. These are the moments when the world literally held its breath, waiting for the unimaginable. Warning 10. Cuban Missile Submarine Crisis, 1962. The year was 1962. The Cold War had reached a fever pitch. In the waters off Cuba, Soviet submarines prowled silently beneath a tense, stormy Caribbean Sea. Among them was B-59, a diesel-powered submarine armed with a nuclear torpedo. The crew was submerged for days, cut off from communication, running low on oxygen, and unaware of the exact state of the world above. Above them, the U.S. Navy was scouring the waters, dropping depth charges, not to destroy, but to signal the submarines to surface. Each blast resonated like a hammer striking the hull, shaking the nerves of every sailor on board. The submarine's captain, Vasily Arkhipov, faced the impossible. Protocol allowed for the launch of a nuclear torpedo if attacked, but such a launch would almost certainly trigger a full-scale nuclear war. The tension inside B-59 was suffocating. The crew debated, some ready to retaliate, convinced the war had already begun. Arkhipov, calm but resolute, refused to authorize the launch. One decision, one man's judgment, prevented catastrophe. The submarine surfaced. The world remained intact. Present-day parallel. Modern nuclear submarines carry even more destructive power. Miscommunication, mechanical failure, or miscalculated protocol could still ignite global catastrophe. Future question. If a single misread or misjudged signal triggers a launch today, could diplomacy survive the aftermath? Warning 9. Taiwan Strait Crisis, 1958. Just 6 years after the Korean War, tensions flared across the Taiwan Strait. China's artillery rained down on offshore islands held by Taiwan. The United States considered full military intervention, its nuclear arsenal readied for possible escalation. U.S. officers faced unimaginable stress. Each decision could tip the balance between regional conflict and global annihilation. Amid secret deliberations in Washington and Beijing, the specter of nuclear escalation hovered, largely invisible to ordinary citizens. Leaders weighed options with horrifying clarity. Would a tactical nuclear strike in the Taiwan Strait prevent broader war, or trigger the very apocalypse they sought to avoid? Present-day parallel. Cross-strait tensions remain high. Every missile test, every military exercise carries echoes of history, reminding us how fragile the balance of peace really is. Future question. Could a miscommunication today escalate a regional dispute into a nuclear confrontation before anyone realizes what happened? Warning 8. Yom Kippur War Nuclear Alert, 1973. October 6, 1973. Egypt and Syria launch a surprise attack on Israel during Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. Israeli forces are caught off guard, suffering massive casualties in the Sinai and Golan Heights. In response, Prime Minister Golda Meir puts Israel's nuclear forces on alert. Nuclear war is no longer theoretical. It is imminent. The world unknowingly holds its breath as superpowers negotiate behind closed doors. The United States pressures Israel to exercise restraint, while the Soviet Union supports its Arab allies. Every message, every phone call carries the potential for misinterpretation and escalation. Psychological perspective. Military commanders operate under immense stress, knowing that any misstep could obliterate millions. Decisions are made not just with logic, but with fear, instinct, and moral calculation. Present-day parallel. The Middle East remains a tinderbox. Nuclear arsenals have multiplied, and modern conflicts carry the same lethal potential. Future question. Could a regional miscalculation today trigger global consequences we are not prepared to handle? Warning 7. Berlin Crisis 1961. August 1961. The world watches as Soviet tanks confront U.S. forces at Checkpoint Charlie, the flashpoint of Cold War tension. In secret, nuclear weapons are moved to readiness positions, poised for immediate deployment. President Kennedy and Premier Khrushchev both navigate a tightrope of intimidation and restraint. Any aggressive move, an unintentional shot fired, a misread order, could trigger a chain reaction across Europe, drawing in NATO and the Warsaw Pact. Soldiers in Berlin wait in tense silence. Each minute feels like an eternity. Communication failures, political brinkmanship, and misjudgments amplify the risk. Present-day parallel. The lessons of Berlin inform modern NATO-Russia relations. Yet the presence of advanced nuclear arsenals makes any miscalculation today potentially even deadlier. Future question. Could a political flashpoint in a divided region ignite a nuclear escalation faster than the world can respond? Warning 6. Kargil Conflict 1999. High in the icy mountains of Kargil, India and Pakistan face off in a dangerous war of positions. Soldiers climb treacherous peaks, enduring freezing temperatures and sniper fire. The tension is amplified by the knowledge that both nations are nuclear powers. Prime ministers and military chiefs weigh retaliation, nuclear readiness, and diplomatic leverage. The world watches silently, unaware of how close global escalation is. A single misinterpreted order or accidental strike could unleash disaster on the subcontinent, and far beyond. Historical insight. The Kargil conflict shows that even after decades of nuclear deterrence, human conflict, pride, and territorial disputes can bring the world perilously close to destruction. Present-day parallel. South Asia remains one of the most volatile nuclear flashpoints. Every minor border clash carries the potential for global consequences. Future question. How close are we today to a nuclear misstep in tense modern borders? And are modern systems robust enough to prevent catastrophe? Warning 5. Petrov Incident 1983. September 26, 1983. The world unknowingly stood on the precipice of nuclear annihilation. In a darkened command bunker outside Moscow, the Soviet early warning system flashes a chilling alert: U.S. missiles inbound. Red lights, sirens, the hum of tension. Stanislav Petrov, a lieutenant colonel tasked with monitoring the system, faces an unimaginable decision. The protocol demands he report the launch to superiors, which could trigger full-scale retaliation. Petrov senses something is wrong. Only 5 missiles. Too few for a full-scale attack. He trusts his intuition over the machine. He decides not to report the launch. Outside, the world continues unaware. Children play, markets function, life goes on. Inside the bunker, one man's judgment preserves humanity. A software glitch, a false alarm, had almost triggered global nuclear war. Present-day parallel. With AI-driven missile detection replacing human intuition in many countries, can logic alone prevent catastrophe if a system errs? Future question. Could an algorithmic misread or misinterpretation spark the end of civilization in mere minutes? Warning 4. Norwegian rocket incident 1995. On November 25, 1995, a civilian scientific rocket launched from Norway's Andøya Space Center. Its mission was purely scientific, to study atmospheric conditions. But Russian radar interpreted it differently. It was a potential U.S. nuclear missile aimed at Moscow. For tense minutes, Russian leadership debated a response, nuclear codes ready at their fingertips. The world teetered silently on the edge. Analysts, generals, and politicians held their breath. Ultimately, the warning was identified as a scientific rocket, and disaster was averted. But the incident revealed how fragile nuclear decision-making could be. Present-day parallel. Today, global surveillance is more sophisticated, yet civilian launches, miscommunications, or technical errors could still ignite similar crises. Future question. Are we truly safer now, or are we just one false alarm away from history repeating itself? Warning 3. 1961 Goldsboro B-52 crash. January 24, 1961. A B-52 bomber, carrying 2 nuclear bombs, breaks apart in midair over Goldsboro, North Carolina. The bombs fall toward populated areas. One detonates partially, failing only due to a single safety switch. Had it gone fully off, millions of Americans would have perished instantly, and global nuclear escalation might have followed. The sheer luck involved is almost unimaginable. One mechanical failure, one switch, one tiny decision preserved humanity. Psychological tension. Military officers and engineers afterward grappled with the horrifying realization: we had survived by a hair's breadth. Present-day parallel. Nuclear safety has improved, but human and mechanical error still pose existential threats. The incident is a chilling reminder of vulnerability. Future question. Could modern nuclear systems withstand multiple simultaneous failures without unleashing catastrophe? Warning 2. Able Archer 83. November 1983. NATO conducts Able Archer 83, a large-scale military exercise simulating nuclear war. To the Soviet Union, it looks alarmingly real. Soviet intelligence interprets the exercise as a potential cover for an actual nuclear strike. Missiles are readied, command posts activated. The world inches toward disaster as both sides misinterpret signals. Miscommunication, paranoia, and military drills nearly ignite World War III. Historical insight. This near catastrophe exposes the fragility of trust during the Cold War, where even routine exercises carried existential risks. Present-day parallel. Military exercises today are still risky if misread by rivals, especially with increasingly automated defense systems. Future question. Could misunderstandings in the age of instant communication and AI-driven alerts trigger a disaster faster than humans can respond? Warning 1. Cuban Missile Crisis 1962. October 1962. 13 days that held the world hostage. Soviet nuclear missiles are deployed to Cuba, just 90 miles from the U.S. coast. President John F. Kennedy faces an impossible dilemma: how to remove the threat without triggering a nuclear response. The U.S. enforces a naval blockade. Soviet ships approach the quarantine line. Submarines lurk beneath the surface. Missiles are ready on both sides. Every communication, every telegram, every diplomatic nuance carries immense weight. One misinterpreted signal, one accidental strike, and billions could die within minutes. Ultimately, Kennedy and Khrushchev negotiate in secret. The Soviets withdraw missiles from Cuba, and a U.S. pledge not to invade Cuba is made. The crisis ends without bloodshed, but the world came closer to nuclear annihilation than ever before or since. Present-day parallel. Modern nuclear crises may lack the transparency and restraint that saved the world in 1962. Tensions in hotspots like the Taiwan Strait or Eastern Europe echo this peril. Future question. Are humanity's lessons enough, or is history doomed to repeat itself in the nuclear age? These 10 near misses reveal an uncomfortable truth. Nuclear war has been avoided not by divine intervention, but by human judgment, luck, and fragile diplomacy. Each story reminds us how perilously close we have come to the edge, and how fragile the peace we take for granted truly is. If these stories shook you, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and join us as we uncover the hidden, forbidden, and terrifying moments the history books rarely tell. The next near apocalypse could be closer than you think.